keep it right.
Keep it right? That's
Stream.
not this show.
Hold on, wait. What have you done with Paul Goody? So yeah, news since we last spoke.
Oh yeah?
You know how I stopped social media because it was taking away too much of my attention. I wasn't working on other stuff.
Yeah.
I started to I can now tell when that thing is happening to me, right? And the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial.
Oh God, yeah.
Thing,
which is finally
was
over.
doing that to me. Yeah, it's finally over. So what I ended up doing was I took YouTube off my phone as well, because I was using YouTube to feed that same thing. And now my days are longer, Ben. That's the only way I can describe it. Time passes more slowly. I have time to do, like reading stuff. My patience is getting higher.
That's a nice thing when it comes to people our age, you know. People middle-aged, such as we are, tend to complain that time goes too fast. And so being able to slow your life down, I think is a plus.
Exactly. The only thing that I haven't done yet that I would really like to do, and this is going to sound crazy, Ben, but to have like a messaging service that says Paul Goody will get back to you within 2 to 3 business days.
2 to 3 years.
If somebody texts me or sends me an email or calls me or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I'd love to be able to have that expectation that I may not get back to them at the time. And I realize that anyone has the ability to set that up. You just have to start being irresponsible, and then people will just assume that you aren't going to get back to them. So
I deal with too many people in my day-to-day work life to set up something like that. I need to be punctual when it comes to business replies.
Speaking about being punctual, as we noted, I thought that I was maybe going to be late because I took my car in. Now, the lore of GudeLaurance, the people who are deep into it know that you used to work at an auto shop.
I did
for a while.
An auto dealership.
So my problem was the wheel bearings.
Yeah.
Right. There was that noise, that like thing, but it was intermittent, and before I actually had my appointment, it went away entirely. So I showed up to the appointment, the guy was in the car, and I'm driving, and I'm like, now normally it'd be making this sound, but it's not. And he was like, okay, there's not a lot that we can diagnose from it not making noise. And I was like, yeah. So they didn't charge me. I just dropped him off and I drove home.
Oh, that's nice.
And yeah, so that's kind of where we're at, and we'll see if it starts making the noise again.
I have a bit of a car issue that's somewhat related to your story, in that when it has nothing to do with wheel bearings. It has everything to do with intermittent noise. I have this rattle on my passenger door that only shows up when it's warm outside. And so I think what it is, what happens is there are two pieces of metal that are so close together inside the car door that when it warms up and the metal expands, they touch. And as I drive along, it makes this rattling noise, and it is annoying AF. I hate driving the car listening to that noise. And so it's been cold all spring, right? Today's like the first day it's been over like 73, if it even hit 73 degrees today. But I've been waiting for my car to make this noise I hate again, so I can call up so I can call up my guy and say, hey, I need you to fix this, because I know what's gonna happen is I'll make that appointment and I'll take the car in and they're like, we don't hear anything.
It gets colder after you make the appointment. Yeah.
Exactly.
So he gave me a couple of hypotheses that he has. And the one that I like is that maybe the road that I'm on is the problem. And it just makes it sound like it's the tire.
Interesting.
Because I do notice that when it shows up, it's normally when it's been raining. So it may actually be, now that you mention it, it may be on colder days that it makes the noise.
Yeah.
And it may be that the wheel bearing has expanded because it's hot, and when it contracts, it makes that. I don't know, but that'd be crazy if that was it, because it was really hot today.
Yeah. I have a couple other things that I need to fix with my car, so I'm waiting for the warmer weather to show up, so I can justify taking my car and. Because I want to have a couple of road trips this summer in my own car as opposed to like in a rental, which I normally do. Yeah. I want to get my car all ready for summer driving.
That sounds like a good thing. I feel like road trips are a great. It's with COVID rearing its ugly head again. And it around here, it has happened. The mayor of St. Louis just got COVID. Apparently. So that's something.
Is the St. Louis mayor a conservative or Republican? I meant, you know what I meant to say. Is it Republican or Democrat?
Both kinds of music here, country and Western.
That's what I assume a Midwestern mayor is. No.
Mayor of St. Louis is a Democrat.
Gotcha. Interesting.
Yes.
So they are I'm assuming, since they're Democrat, have been masking.
I believe so, but they went to a lot of different events, so I don't know. Maybe so. The other thing that's interesting is that their opponent in the last mayoral race apparently just got in trouble for accepting money from a land deal thing that was happening. I don't know exactly what it is. I'm trying to avoid, oh, by the way, so one of the things is I was getting sucked into with YouTube, like watching trials and people testifying and watching not just that one trial, but like a whole bunch of other trials to like go, okay, is this person lying or are they not? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And much like, or similar to a video game where you go like, I don't know if this is going to be useful in the real world. I don't know if I'm getting super good at Tetris, is that really going to help me with anything else? That kind of thing. I'm like, well, I'm not going to be a lawyer. And even if I can tell when people are lying, will anyone else believe me? Like at what point in time does this become a good skill, and at what point will it just be frustrating? Because I'll know that a person is lying and no one else will believe me. So that was one of the good things about getting the YouTube off of the phone, is that now I'm picking more what I'm seeing. I'm not getting lost in rabbit holes as much. And I've been reading the books that I've been buying, which is great. I do want, however, to talk just a brief bit, because we covered it on here. And as you know, Ben, as we always say, this isn't a podcast of the people for the people of now. We're recording this for people in the future who want to know what life was like during this time.
Exactly.
So I will just say that when the lawyers, so I was watching the stream, and then there were lawyers talking about, so I was watching the trial stream live, and there were lawyers who were doing kind of a play-by-play on what was happening in the courtroom. Like, and it was nice, you know. It was like, oh, they shouldn't have said this because now they're going to object to this, and then the person would object, that kind of thing. So it was like watching sports. Granted, two people's lives potentially being destroyed at the same time, but then again, in sports that can happen as well. Uh, but you're talking more injury than so.
Right.
But one of the things they said was the average juror in Virginia, where the trial is being held, makes $30 a day, and these people have been on
Oh,
a trial that's dragged on.
That's not like the median income for that area. That's how much they're making as a juror.
How much they're making as a juror.
Okay.
And they said, so these people haven't been able to work. They've been, you know, listening to these two rich people duke it out, and listening to their you know, their how many penthouses, like, oh, this is penthouse 1, they're penthouse 1 through 5, you know, that kind of thing. And they said, I'm going to bet you that this jury is going to find both of them guilty, because you know, he sued Amber Heard countersued him, which is exactly what happened. At the end, they were both found that they had committed liable against the other, but there's a disproportionate settlement. So Johnny Depp asked for $50 million, got $10 million. Amber Heard asked for, and then they were going to award a certain amount of damages, but Virginia caps how much you get for either damages or court fees or something. So he didn't get as much as that, but Amber Heard got $2 million. So it all works out in the end to where the previous settlement that he had to pay her is kind of covered by that $10 million. But he didn't really care. He just wanted to, yeah. But here's this is the thing is, I'm sure that this might be what you're going for. I don't know. The news reporting of this incident, the tenor of most of it is, we all suck. This should not have been entertainment for anybody. No matter who won, we all lost. That sort of thing. So
well,
go ahead.
I mean, the 10 million and 2 million to those two respectively don't sound like a lot of money to them, right? So I have a hard time.
Well, $2 million is the amount that Amber Heard made on Aquaman 2.
Yeah. So I've no feelings whatsoever. I have no empathy. I have no sympathy for either of them in terms of how much money they wanted versus how much they got. I don't care. Yeah. But
she
it
asked
does
for $100 million.
It does sound like, well, you always shoot high, but you know, but it sounds like the jury. I don't know if they got it right, but what I've always said is like both of them were wrong, you know, and I guess the jury decided who's less wrong in this case.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the reaction that I've seen on social media is that the reaction I've seen on social media is that he won, she lost. And so a lot of people are complaining that it's, you know, the trial, just like everything else in life, was a misogynistic outcome. And, you know, and people are unfriending those who are saying, yay, Johnny Depp won. You know, I'm staying out of it. But it just sounds like they're both terrible. They were both terrible people to each other. And now we can now we can forget this whole thing ever happened and move on with our lives.
Well, and the big thing for me is it was very instructive for just how I was living my life in general. And like, this should not have there is no reason why me, Paul Goody, as a person, should have been caring about this at all.
So why did you? Have you looked inside yourself in such a way as to figure out why this held such? Why you were
believe it was because I was being fed this through social media and, you know, including YouTube on that.
Yeah.
Like it's like candy, right? I like candy. I like the way it tastes. Oh, there's some candy out here. I'm going to eat it. Um, and then all of a sudden, I'm using this as an example. I have an abscess, right? And I'm eating, and the more candy I eat, the worse the abscess gets. But
Right.
what am I going to do? Stop eating the candy? It's right here, and I love it,
Who
and
does
all
that?
that.
I know. There was one time I went to a wedding, and instead of like a buffet or food, like there was pizza, but it was a very casual wedding in a very like party event space, and it was around Halloween, and there was so much candy around. Like so much candy in every room, mountains of candy. I had a dentist appointment like within the week, and so I'm like, I
Oh wait,
can't.
so you froze on for me when you said I had,
Yeah.
and you were going to say I had a bunch of candy. Maybe is that what you were going to say?
Well, apparently,
Or
because YouTube just told me that I was offline, so apparently my internet just cut out briefly. No, what I was saying was that I had a dentist appointment that next week, and so I
oh,
had to,
wow, I
well,
never would have guessed.
I had to restrain myself from just gobbling up all of this delicious candy that was that was at this wedding I went to.
Yeah. So imagine it's candy that that you don't actually like. That's sort of the thing is that,
A bit of honey.
I wasn't I wasn't excited about either of these two people, in general. The one thing I will say, and no, I'm not even gonna say. Not gonna say anything. Not gonna say anything. Boom,
All right.
easy. Because I was getting sucked back into it, and I'm not. No, I'm reading right now a game zine called "A Visitor's Guide to the Rainy City." It's not about Seattle. It's a fantasy thing, and it's great. It's written by Robert Forrest, and I don't remember who did the art, but it's really good, and it's inventive, and it's this whole world where it rains all the time, and it's also magic, and talks about, they they cook their food using these things called salt boiling salts. I think it's called boiling salts,
Okay.
uh, that are made by an alchemist, so on and so forth. It's great. And why don't I talk about that instead of whatever else I was going to talk about? I ask you.
I've been
It's
reading
really easy.
I've been reading a book called Fuzz by Mary Roach. It's called Fuzz When Nature Breaks the Law. And it's about cases where animals have broken the law that a human would have, been arrested and charged with. What do you do with an animal? And so it's, yeah, Mary Roach is
Nice.
one of my.
Mary Roach, as we know, Packing for Mars. I think she did that one.
Her
I
only
know she
book
did
that is
Stiff.
not a her only book that is not a one-word title. She's got Stiff, Spook, Bonk, Gulp, Grunt, Fuzz, and Packing for Mars. There's probably
Okay.
one more in there that I'm forgetting. I've read all of them. Fuzz is the latest. But yeah,
Cool. Cool. Cool.
I
Cool.
find that
And
my habit when I get home from work is to make dinner and then just watch TV. So I've been trying to not do that and just I'm trying to make dinner and then read. As a
I was
consequence,
talking
I'm
to
missing out on a
Jennifer.
lot of TV.
Oh, yeah, I've been watching TV as well. Uh, I saw Night Sky, which was pretty good. But no more Mr. Night Sky. Ah, that's a good joke. But is it though? I don't know. So, but I was telling Jennifer, I forgot about this, but when I read books, suddenly television sucks for me. And specifically fiction television, like
Yeah.
and I think it's because my brain can do a whole bunch to make books good for me or stories good for me, and it's less of a I don't control it as much when I'm watching the TV. Somebody else has come up with the imagery,
Yeah.
and so it's not necessarily as good. But sometimes it is. There are still some books that I enjoy. I mean, not books. Sorry,
TV shows.
TV shows. I enjoy it, but they're not. You know, they're not all great, and I forget that if I haven't read for a while. I'm like, yeah, this is pretty good, I guess. And then I read something, I'm like, man, I can't even start watching that again because it's bad.
I have a, I, I, I don't know what it is. It's just something in my biology, or I don't know, maybe I'm out of practice. But reading just makes me so tired. So what I'll do,
It does.
and generally, I mean, I'm reading before I go to bed. So yeah, put two and two together. But still, like I can't get through like 20 pages without like nodding off. And unintentionally. And it's not like what I'm reading is boring. It's just that my brain and my eyes are like, okay, we're done. And I find that I've like read a paragraph and it's not registered at all.
Yeah. One of the things that I notice when I read is that I stim a lot more. Like Jennifer pointed this out to me because she's sitting on the couch playing a video game. I'm reading a book, and she's like, "What are you doing that for?" And I realized that for the past like 5 minutes, I've been doing this,
What?
reading and just doing that. And you know, yeah, why am I doing that?
Your brain is in
And
other worlds, man.
well, but it's also exactly what you're talking about. It keeps me from sleeping. I do this too, shake my
Yeah.
hand back and forth.
Oh, gotcha. I gotcha.
Because yeah, I really honestly think, and I'm sure that there's a study about this that we can look up, but as you know, we keep it wrong here. I'm thinking it's because you actually are burning calories when you're reading.
I
You're honestly,
I wouldn't doubt it.
you know, making the effort to make the word squiggles into pictures in your brain
Yeah.
is taking energy.
I've always had that problem though, even as a kid. Not that reading put me to sleep, but I would zone out when I would read. I remember reading when I was in junior high. I had to read Wide Sargasso Sea, which is a book I would never pick up as an adult. And I remember sitting on the.
What is it? Can you?
It's like a Jane Austen era novel. I'm reading it for like English literature class. But I remember sitting on the couch in the living room reading it, and I realized that I had gotten like out of like the 30 pages I needed to read that night, because when you're in school you have like, okay, by Monday read page to 30, by Tuesday read page to 60. Of the, I had read like 15 pages conscious, right? I'm not sleeping, I'm reading, and then I realize I have no idea what I just read. I couldn't tell you what happened in those last 15 pages. I was just like, my eyes were moving over the words, but they didn't make it into my brain.
That can happen, yeah, for sure. What I would normally do is I would just read the book. Like I wouldn't pay attention to what letters we have to do. And it was similar. Then this is kind of what you're talking about.
I was definitely page counting.
Similar to where you're driving home, and you get home and you didn't really like. I would read the book and I'd have the book in my head, but the conscious reading, turning the page, and things like that gone. And occasionally I would run into the same situation as you. I would be reading, I'd be like, wait a second, I was thinking about something else. I lost some of what I read, and I would go back. And the thing is that when I would read those things again, I would still have a recollection of, oh yeah, that's right.
Like a deja vu moment or something.
Exactly. And so I don't know if that made it in or if I was just thinking that, because as you know, deja vu can trick you in that way.
I've seen that movie.
I don't think, is there a movie called Deja Vu?
No, I'm talking about both The Matrix and Glitch in the Matrix.
Oh yes, that's right. Oh, yeah, that's something. I think about every once in a while. The the fact that I've gotten a couple of things that someone might have, like, there's a stranger out there, right, who has seen me on the Bravo Lulwork show, has seen me on the Patton Oswalt DVD extras, has seen me
I gotta pick that up.
on
I haven't seen that yet.
A Glitch in the Matrix, and then has also um, run into me doing the Green Day and Flow Rider mashup, like all those things, but doesn't know that I'm the same guy,
Yeah.
right? And sometime the two and two will be put together, and they'll be like, huh, and that's all. It'll just be, huh. But that happens to me sometimes. I'm sure it's happened to you too. Uh, hey Adam, I can't do a Bono impression, but I'm sure it happened to you too. Hey Adam, look what the Edge just found out. Is if I could do a Bono impression, that would be. But I'm sure that you, Ben Lawrence, have also experienced this, where you're like, wait a second, this person was in this commercial, and when you realize that they're the person from the commercial, you're like, oh yeah, that's right. Like Aaron Paul, right,
Yeah.
from Breaking Bad, was on a commercial that I saw way before Breaking Bad, but I didn't know that it was him. But once I knew, it retroactively made it, oh wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Same thing again. We've talked about this before. You see a movie that 20 years old and has like 3 Oscar winners in it, but at the time they were just actors, so it didn't register.
I was
That sort of
watching
thing.
I was watching Groundhog Day, a movie that I've seen many, many times.
Yeah.
And at the very end of the movie, a very young Michael Shannon shows up. And like at the and you're like,
Really?
"Oh, that's General Zod and the guy from Boardwalk Empire. That's Michael Shannon, but he's like a teenager in Groundhog Day."
What does he do in it?
At the very end, Bill Murray and Andy McDowell are like at some high school dance or something, and Michael Shannon comes up and with his date, and Bill Murray gives him something like tickets to like ZZ Top or something, and just gets like super excited and like bounces off.
Crazy.
Yeah.
That's insane. I
Hey, before we go on
but
though,
that's exactly, yeah.
yeah, what's the name of that Patton Oswalt show that we were at the taping of? Because I need to buy that.
I don't remember, unfortunately.
Damn it!
Just look up Patton Oswalt live Seattle.
Well, I'm not going to do that right now because I can't. But I remember
yeah,
when we went to the show, it rained so hard on us as we walked from the car to the moor.
Oh yeah, it was a good show. It was funny.
My hair was still wet by the end of the show.
The opening comedian was really good, and I can't remember who it was now.
Was it Derek Sheen?
No, I should remember. I was going to say I used to follow him on Twitter. He's a funny
Mike
guy
Drucker?
there too. Mike Drucker. That's it. That's exactly it.
Mike
How
is
did
funny.
you know?
Because I follow him on Twitter as well, and I remember the opener was a comedian that I knew.
Yeah, Mike Drucker.
We'd met Mike a couple times. Wouldn't say that I'm friends with him, but I have met him.
You and I met him.
Yeah, he's well, I don't know. He did Weird and Awesome a couple times. I don't know if you were here for that.
Okay. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, there's a lot of people that I meet that I don't remember that I meet. If that makes sense.
He also opened for Mark Maron at the Neptune once that I went to go see.
Oh, cool. I have this thing that's been going on. Jennifer is doing physical therapy for her muscles.
Yes.
And she had me do it with her. And I did it 2 days ago.
Just like some home exercises?
And my muscles still hurt. Like when I stand up, when I walk downstairs, all that. It's insane.
It's amazing how your muscles can lie dormant for the longest time and then yell at you when you try to wake them up.
Exactly. No thanks, they say. I don't wanna.
Speaking of
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
quickly, speaking of people who recognize you from like LOL work and Glitch in the Matrix and all that, every time I meet somebody, and this happens a lot, like almost every time I meet someone, they're like, "You look familiar. How do I know you?" I'm like, "Well, let me just run down the list of places you may have seen me." But I don't do that. I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. I just have one of those faces."
Yeah. Wait.
I just look like every other white guy.
There is, of course, the 10 things I hate about you. And that's number one that I think of when I think of things. I mean, you're on the street all the time, walking around. If they're in Seattle, there's and they're in theater at all, they would have seen you.
That's the thing.
Places.
A lot of the people that I meet are connected to people that I know in theater, and so it's possible that they like saw us at Spin the Bottle, or I was hanging out in the bar during a show and they came to see something.
You also have done industrials. Like, there's always a chance. Do you work for Microsoft? Or whatever. That's.
Yeah, I'm the guy in the HR video telling you what not to do.
When I say tons, I mean two. There are two of those that I've done that I've never seen, for sure. There's footage of me out there that I do not know.
I did an industrial once for Microsoft, and I found one of the clips online, and I'm like, oh man, this is so goddamn terrible.
Yeah. It's true. But no, what I was gonna say is, Betty is actually she'll be back by the time I checked with Jennifer. She'll be back by the time this airs. But she's at Disney World right now.
Disney World?
For her band.
Wow, that must be fun.
Yeah, it is. I was thinking about this. Her band has won a ton of awards and things like that. And whenever their band thing is happening, they're like, "Hey, who here is an alumni of the band? Stand up!" And I always stand up because I'm an alumni of the band. But when we were around, when our band was around, we were not winning anything.
We were up behind the bleachers smoking dope.
Oh no, nothing like that. Well, actually, probably some members of the band, not me. Though I was carrying a sousaphone. That was my big thing.
A John Phillips sousaphone.
It was a big thing. Yeah, exactly. The big white twisty, tuba-looking.
You played that in high school?
I did.
How did I not know that? Or why did I not remember that?
I don't know. I mean, my big story is this: that I joined band, and they said, "What do you play?" I said, "I play trombone," and I hadn't played trombone since like the 2nd or 3rd grade, something like that. So I was not good, and they were like, "I'll tell you what, can you carry this thing?" And they taught me how to play the sousaphone, and so that's what I was.
Wow, they taught in my high school. If you had tried to join band and didn't play an instrument, they would have just been like, "We don't need you."
Yeah, that was a very interesting.
Go take a class.
Yeah, it would not happen in this band now. I think anyway. Pretty sure.
Yeah. You gotta come in with a certain set of skills, like exactly. Liam Neeson and Taken.
That's. All right, now who is going to hunt down my daughter's kidnappers? Paul, thank you. Everybody else, let's
pick up your sousaphone.
So, no, but
turn to page 5 in your songbook.
That actually, Ben, we've just come up with something. Somebody who joins the CIA, but they don't have any. No one has vetted them. They don't realize that this person can't do anything.
Right.
No, that was a big thing, is that when I was a kid, I don't think I've ever mentioned this on the podcast, but when I was a kid, I wanted to be in the FBI or the CIA or something, I wanted to join law enforcement. I was disabused of that notion, though, by running into situations when I was in high school where people who were supposed to be doing the right thing weren't.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait a second, why aren't they doing the right thing? They're supposed to be. And the reason was because, they didn't have to. That honor and walking the straight and narrow and all that was a lie. And I was like, well, if I join the FBI or the CIA, people might want me to lie. And I don't want to do that. So I stopped trying to do it. But one of the things that they said is if you want to do this, accounting is a good degree to get.
To join the FBI.
Yeah. Because a lot of what you're doing is looking at people's books to see if they're cooking them or not.
There's an episode of Fargo, the one that Ewan McGregor is in, and
where he plays the twins.
Yeah, he plays the twins, and there's an investigator who looks at the books of the of his company. Oh, and fun fact, that investigator is the priest
from
Midnight Mass.
Midnight Mass. Yeah. And he's also in Legion,
which I have not seen, but I was like, I hate looking at my own books. I can't imagine having a job where your job is to go to a business and try to find some sort of malfeasance in their accounting.
I don't know. I think that would actually be more fun than
chasing down bad guys.
It's like tearing stuff down rather than building things. You know what I mean? It's a different mood. That was one of the fun things. I'll just tell you really quick, Ben. That the word demo is used in the electronics world, or sorry, the low volt electrical world, to mean two things. One is to pull out and all the wires and take out all the stuff.
Demolition,
and the other
demolish.
Is to, demo, short for demolition. And then the other is to show people how something works.
Demonstrate.
And I often wonder if there's ever been a time where the two things have been confused.
Hilariously confused.
Yeah. That was something.
Can you demo this intricate thing that I just built? Sure thing, boss.
Exactly.
That took me years.
So, hey, have you ever been to Australia?
I have.
How was it?
Hot. I went during the summertime, their summertime, which is I was there in November. And it was reasonable, fine. In Sydney was great, but when I was in Cairns, which is in North Australia, closer to the equator, I went out on one of those Great Barrier Reef tours. And I was
Cairns. Is it spelled like Caen, like in France?
No, it is actually spelled Cairns. It looks like Cairns, but it's pronounced Cairns.
Okay.
Yeah, Cairns. And I went out on this tour of the Great Barrier Reef, and if I was outside, like out from underneath the shade, I could feel my skin sizzling. Like,
wow.
It gets sunny here, but I don't feel like I am actually physically burning when, I am burning, but down there I was. So, yes, God damn it, what's going on?
It's frozen again.
Yeah, I know. YouTube was just like, your internet is bad. That's upsetting.
Too bad.
Anyway, yeah. So why do you ask?
Well, an interesting fact: Jennifer she was born in Australia. Did you know that?
You actually told me that last week.
Yeah.
I may have known it at some point, but it came up last week because of the whole move into Australia conversation.
Yeah. So the thing about that is that I forgot that we had that entire conversation because I think we had it off podcast, and if it doesn't happen on the podcast, it doesn't happen in my brain.
Oh, did we have it off podcast? I had forgotten.
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was introducing it.
And
You know,
I
maybe we
forget what
didn't,
we
but
have
I
off
think we
and
did.
on podcasts.
So again, the thing that I talked about was that, you know, it's kind of, I mean, we do make decisions as a family and all that, but it's sort of up to her whether or not she, I mean, the all the power in this situation resides in her. If she decides that she actually wants to do it, um, you know, then I will have to adjust to that,
Yeah, it's a
basically.
different time zone.
Um, and
Different hemisphere. Is
but
that a
then, you
very?
know,
I mean,
the idea
is that a possibility? Like, I
for
know
what,
it's
for her to move there. Oh yeah, uh,
not
I
just
mean,
her, but all y'all.
yeah.
I don't think she would
That's
just
the
go
thing
there
is
by
that,
herself.
are you talking about like legally? Is it a possibility?
Not legally, but
Because legally, it it works. Financially, it gets a little, you know, just like anything. Like if we wanted to move to New York City, well, I would have to get a job in New York City, you know, that kind of thing.
yeah.
Same sort of deal. I'd have to figure it out,
I
and there
guess
would
I
be
guess
I know there would be a time where she would be there and I would be here.
I guess my question is it a lot of ideas like this can be like just talk and just fantasy. But how close
Yeah.
realistically is this to an actionable item?
Well, again, like I said, it all kind of rests on her shoulders as far as that stuff goes. I will say this: if she were to do that, then I would follow her.
I'd hope so.
You know, and it depends. It depends on you know, what sort of opportunities she finds and all that sort of thing if she's interested. But yeah, you know, I'm not gonna make her do it. Obviously, I'm not you know, pressuring her like, hey, what about this? Don't you want, you know, it just was something that, it's something that, like, if you can imagine like a going to Paris thing, right?
Yeah.
Everybody wants to go to Paris. Well, not everybody, but you know what I mean. A lot of people, oh, I'd like to go to Paris someday.
City of Love.
If you want to go to Paris someday, and also there happens to be a flat in Paris that you know about that you could go and stay at if you just ask the right person. You know, that makes it a little bit more real than everybody else who's, and that's what I would say is that it is more realistic for that to happen in this situation than it is for a lot of other people. A
Yeah.
lot of other people going, "Oh, I'm just going to move." You
Yeah.
know, I want to move. I want to get out of here. I want
I'm gonna
to
move to Canada or New Zealand.
however, right, exactly. Right, exactly. The
Renounce my
difference
U.S. citizenship.
now, see that I would not have to do. This is the because that's one of the things I looked into, right? Um, I, as a U.S. citizen, can apply for a special visa that allows me to stay and work in Canada as the spouse of someone who is a Canadian citizen. Or, oh, did I say Canada? I meant Australia.
You did say Canada.
Sorry. As someone who is a spouse of
Paul
Australian
Goody
citizen,
leading a double
because
life in Canada.
I mean, one of the things that's important to think about is, you know, with if I'm working for a company in the U.S., a company that is headquartered in the U.S., you know, that I could theoretically still continue to work for that company, even if I was living in Australia,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. At least for however long they would want me to work for them and all. It gets very complicated. Um, and again, this is a good point that you make. It's not something, and Jennifer said this to me as well. It's not something to like freak out over or really,
Right.
worry about until it actually is something that might be happening.
Till it happens.
Yeah.
You come home,
Exactly.
find the suitcases packed.
Well, I mean, and this is and I'm not being like melodramatic or anything like that, but this is what I'm talking about. That this is the situation um where I am definitely not saying it would go down like that, but because of the way that this works, it would be a situation where it could I could find out about it someday. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that that is what would happen, but it could happen. And so it's just in the back of my head as a possibility.
I don't know. Would it be? I don't know. You'd find out about it as opposed to making a decision as a family. Is this something you want to talk about on this show?
Well, no. I don't want to mischaracterize how any of that. Okay, this is what I would say: is we're doing calculus, not hard math, right?
Yeah.
I believe that it would be something that we would talk about and decide and things like that. However, the risk management side of me, then that this is very important. It's not a part of me that I can turn off. Realizes um, that it is also something that could happen without any involvement from me whatsoever.
Yeah.
There's not a because first of all there's no like laws that keep it from happening. That's number one. But number two also, there is nothing in my character that would say that I would not be able to adapt to that. And when I say that, I realize the whole uh my love of routine and all that other, autistic trait stuff aside, what I mean by that is that um it might concern me for a little bit, but I would be able to get over it because we've had conversations about it already,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it would be something that we would have to work out if it were to happen. And this episode will be funny to listen to if ever something of that nature were to happen. But what I can say is
Funny.
I'm not expecting it to happen, right? There's a difference between thinking about it as a possibility and expecting it to happen.
Yeah. Okay.
And I do a lot of, there are, I don't want to get too personal, but there are tons of things like every day I imagine getting a phone call that my parents have been murdered by someone that I know, that kind of thing.
Ugh. I think I know what's behind that.
I'm not saying that it would ever happen,
Right.
but I could see it happen as
Yeah.
a not an accident, but sort of an accident, that sort of thing. So I keep myself prepared for that. Just like, every day that I go to work, I imagine getting an email saying, "Hey, we're not
Your services
working
are no
anymore."
longer required.
Exactly. Yeah. And why? Because that happened at Amazon, not
Yeah.
from me, but from, and it happened all the time when I was doing the low voltage work. Um, I told you about that already. My sixth sense of when we were going to uh, be off of a project. The first thing, if you're ever working construction and they say, "Hey, today we're going to go around and clean up around the job site," you know that it's probably ending
Yeah.
because they want to have all that done before they let people go because they don't want to have to clean up all the trash. That's the main thing. So, and I would tell people that I would say, "Okay, this is probably it," and they go, "No, we still have 3 weeks left." I'm like, "All right," and then that day things would happen. So
Yeah.
Oh, and just checking any interaction with anyone on
None
the
whatsoever. In
podcast.
fact, nobody's watching the stream. Nobody's emailed us. As if by design. Well, when you were on
Is
Twitter,
it
I did post a YouTube link to Twitter, and occasionally we would get somebody watching. But now that there's no reason to promote it, I don't.
yeah, is it weird to me that I like the fact that there's no one watching? It feels
Well,
like it
we've been shell
feels
shocked.
right. Yeah, that is true. But then also the other thing is that I mean the the concept of it being a secret podcast is nice. We've told enough people that the word could be out there if anybody was interested. And maybe I really do like the idea of someone finding it and this being their little secret thing, and they think that they're the only ones listening to us.
It did. I mean, our YouTube channel, and this is episode 327. We don't have 327 on the YouTube channel, but we do have quite a few.
Yeah.
But we do have 12 to 14 subscribers, which, are friends. So if they happen to be on YouTube when we're
Can
recording
you
one of these
see who
things.
the people are?
No, YouTube doesn't give you those metrics.
Yeah. I bet you they give somebody those metrics. We just don't pay them enough.
You probably have to have like 1 million subscribers before they're like, all right, here's a data dump.
Yeah, I could imagine. Or you can have hey, you've reached this tier. You can have a data dump for $5,000 a month or whatever. Because there's some places that would pay for that, I believe.
Yeah.
This is
I
one of the reasons why I quit most. Well, actually, I guess all except for, you know, the the stuff that social media that I don't think about as being social media. I'm sure that there are some things out there. I I I do not necessarily like the idea of my data being commodified and me not getting a cut of it.
I remember in the early days of blogging, back in like the GeoCities / Live Journal days, and back in like 2001, 2002, I was constantly, almost every day, looking at the referrals for who was coming to my GeoCities site, just because it was like, again, back in the early days, I wanted to know who was reading my stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
It seemed very important at the time.
And sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. You'd be surprised. I mean, the thing is, uh, the amount. I'll just say this: the amount of useful data that comes from social media for people is astounding. You can, and I'm not exaggerating here. You can, through just open source, just things that people have signed up and said yes, please, make this open. You can do a heat map of, I've talked about this before, a heat map of political ideologies of a city,
Yeah.
and figure out which areas to lock down, things of that nature. It's a little bit crazy.
Every once in a while on Twitter, it's mostly on Twitter, sometimes it's on Facebook, I get served an ad for some sort of like far right leaning ideology or candidate. Like, I got served on Twitter a promoted post from the Trump organization. And I'm like, wow, either you are just a full blast to everybody, or your people have gotten this seriously wrong.
Yeah. And the thing, okay, I'll say one more thing. I don't think that they're gonna listen, but this is something I came across. There was someone who was saying that they don't like the idea because they've been I'm gonna move to the whole I'm gonna move to Canada, I'm gonna move to Europe, whatever thing,
Yeah.
right? And they said, I'm sick and tired of people saying that if you say you're going to move to Europe and you're actually going to do it, that you're privileged in some way. What about my family and their health and safety and all that? And my thought on that is that you need to acknowledge that you are privileged if you can move to Europe. And the thing that I would say is an allegory to that, or not an allegory, similar to that, a similar thing to that, just use simple English, why not? Um, are the people who are like, I, you know, uh, I can't believe that anybody would live in Alabama. Um, they deserve to get their funding taken away because their governor is stupid or whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They voted for him, not thinking about how many voters are disenfranchised and stuff like that. There are people who can't move and they're disenfranchised in voting and all that kind of thing. So when people say that you're privileged to be able to move to Europe, they are they're not. I mean, you might feel bad because you feel as though privilege is a bad thing and you don't want to be a bad person, but you have to acknowledge the fact that the ability to make a choice, good for your family, the idea that, because I'm doing this to protect my family, the fact that you can do this to protect your family uh, does mean that you are privileged. Does it mean that you hate poor people? I don't think so. I feel like, however, you should acknowledge that you are doing something that poor people cannot do. People who do not have contacts in Europe cannot do. You 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 can feel upset that people are saying this about you and your ability to leave the country and go to Europe, but you have to acknowledge that they are not lying about it. Because I think that you can say this hurts my feelings. I feel bad that you're saying this, but it doesn't mean that it's not true. I guess that's my point.
That yeah, that conversation enters into a lot of the privilege conversation enters into a lot of discourse about basically just American life. You know, when they were our previous president had an interview with somebody where the discussion of Roe v. Wade was being taken away, or would be rescinded if he had his way, and it turns out he did. Then he was like, we'll leave it up to the states. It's just the states' problem. And the interviewer was like, what about people what about people who like live in a red state? He's like, well, if they want one, they just go to a blue state. Not even thinking. Doesn't even have.
Yeah.
Doesn't even. This guy can't even comprehend that people that somebody in central Alabama can't fly to New York or wherever the nearest fucking blue state is to get
Right.
to get a procedure. So yeah, I think thinking about privilege and owning one's privilege is, and I'm probably way off base here, but it seems like a very leftist ideology. When in fact the people on the right, people who live in very red states are the ones who are severely underprivileged.
Well, and this is the thing, is that the person with whom I am, seeing this conversation is a very left-leaning person. On paper, and this is like, I think about it and how it reflects on me too. Um, I believe in many uh, left-wing ideas, right? But where do I live? Where do I work?
Yeah.
What do I actually do? Who am I making money for? Who am I giving my money to? Through taxes and things like that. That's the thing, is that um the the place where my house is, because of gerrymandering and all that kind of thing, I have Republican state senators. And I
Yeah.
can vote for, and I do vote for the Democrat ones, but they don't get voted in.
No.
Um,
Because you are an outlier,
so,
sir.
and also the other thing is this: when when the time comes, if things go bad, all that sort of stuff, who is suffering the most? Is it people that look like me, or is it other people? And if it is other people mostly, if I don't like, and I've talked about this before, the idea of betraying one's principles, oh, I may have to betray my principles. I may have to, you know, accept the fact, or I may have to, I'm just giving this as an example. Oh, I may have to work at the munitions factory that makes the weapons that bomb the people. And I feel bad about that. And I want to leave because I don't want to work in a munitions factory,
Yeah.
you know, but I'm not the person being bombed. How much is the fact that I feel bad about what's happening, and that my family will be affected by it? How much different is that than the person who cannot take off their hat or get a new haircut or whatever and be fine? Shave off your beard, get a haircut, put on a suit, and now you're fine.
Right. And now you'll
um
blend in.
exactly. Between that, and or saying, yeah, you know I'm going to Brazil instead, which would be crazy. But you know what I mean, like
Yeah.
people that go somewhere else and can afford to do it, um you know um on an extended vacation. That is a privilege. That is that is not something that you should necessarily feel bad about doing. You are leaving a bunch of people who don't have your advantages behind at that point, because you're removing yourself from the situation. You're not working to better the lives of those people that you've left behind. You are doing something that is selfish.
You're abandoning ship.
Is it necessarily bad? I would say not as bad as actively working against the people, but it is something that you should acknowledge that you're doing. That's all. Then,
Well, Paul, it's about that time. It's been my privilege to speak with you this hour.
oh yes, and of course, Ben. Obviously, I would love it if between now and the next time we speak, you do everything in your power to keep it wrong.
I'll do everything in my power to keep it wrong, and I hope you do as well. Keep it wrong, Paul, and I'll talk to you next week.